Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens. Apologies, I actually ended up firing the stream to the wrong stream, so that was very clever of me. But we are now going, so I hope you're all looking forward to tonight's show. And we have got quite a bit to discuss. We're going to be talking about Bornauw's situation, as you can see over there, because there's been loads of talks at this moment in time about the potential that he actually might be leaving Leeds United this season, which would be a bit of a shame, and leaving sort of in the January window as well, so really early on, which I think would be a shame and potentially premature. But I know I've seen a lot of Leeds fans online sort of wanting to get rid of Bornauw already, saying there's no place for him in the Leeds team. What's the pathway to start 11, etc., etc. So we're going to talk a bit about that, but I am leaning towards potentially him not leaving, in my personal opinion. So a bit of that. We're also going to look at sort of other potential outgoings in the January transfer window as well. So who could possibly move on? Because we've talked quite a lot on this channel, I feel like. A lot about incomings at Leeds United. Who's going to come in January? What positions would you look at? But I think it's potentially time to do the reverse side. And I think since we're talking about Bornauw, we might as well look into other potential players. So I'm looking at Piroe. I'm actually looking at the loan players as well. Gelhardt, could we cash in January there? Ramazani, could we cash in there? Joseph, could we cash in there? So we're going to talk about all that as well. We're also going to talk about Leeds' upcoming fixture list as well, and how Leeds United are going to get points in what looks like a really, really tricky period, and where can actually Leeds United target points in the next 6 games. Because actually I think there's a bit of a dynamic that's getting sort of talked about with Leeds at this moment in time about how hard they are, but I actually think some of it's not as bad as quite people are making out. I think there's a bit of... Yeah, I don't think it's quite as bad as people are saying. Also, as well, I want to talk a bit about Brighton's lineup tonight as well, which I have got. So I want to talk through that, because they have started a really, really strong lineup tonight against Arsenal in the Cup. And obviously, with us playing them on Saturday, it's obviously paramount. Whatever they're doing in this game, I think is naturally important to this game. Ollie says, favourite time of the show, favourite time of the day. It's my favourite time of the day as well, mate. The 8 o'clock show. And also, I wasn't meant to be doing it today, but I've managed to find a way to get some time. So there we are. Anyway, let's start by talking about Bornauw, who is obviously the main focus of tonight's show. And I wanted to talk about him because I've seen a lot online about Bornauw at this moment in time, and about potentially him moving on. And I think there is a fundamental chance that he moves on. And we've talked about this a lot of the time, sort of on this channel, about sort of Bornauw and how he's going to play. But what we've also talked about in terms of Leeds United's incomings is all about the World Cup and how that's going to affect players in January. And we've talked about potentially with players in the Premier League playing at this moment in time who are not playing for their certain clubs. You see where I'm going with this, who might want to get out to make sure they get in that World Cup squad. Because we know Bornauw has featured for Belgium a few times, so he might think he's got an outside chance of getting that Belgium squad. But of course, not featuring at all at Leeds United, he's not going to promote his chances there. And when you've got the club like Anderlecht linked to Bornauw at this moment in time, who potentially might want to do a loan option there in the January window, or potentially even a permanent, it does look like, if you're Bornauw, I think you look at it and go, well, if I go to Anderlecht to have a really good time, I might get an outside shout of being in that World Cup squad, which we know is massively, massively important for players. So I want to talk a bit about that. But my honest feeling regarding all of this Bornauw stuff is, I don't think there's any point in a sale in January, personally. I think the sale in January makes no particular sense in my eyes, because you look at it and you go, okay, we'll sell him in January. We've just brought him for 5 million quid in the summer. How much more are we going to get than that? Probably less. So you're probably looking at maybe 3 million, 4 million in January. Well, then we're going to be banking a loss. So in terms of a sale, I completely don't understand it. And then in terms of a loan, well, the whole point of bringing Bornauw to the football club, in my personal opinion, was to play backup. That was what we had. We had Biol and Strauch sort of fighting for that #1 spot. And then we had Bornauw there as sort of a replacement if we go down to the bare bones, so we don't have to do what we did last season and put Ampadu in the midfield. So I look at this moment in time and go, yes, Bornauw is not getting the football he probably desires. But what I would also say is, Strauch's got a bad injury record. And then you're only one off, if he's injured, off getting Bornauw into the team. And I think when you look at sort of what would have been advised to Bornauw in the summer and the price we paid for him and what we've done in other positions, for me it's quite obvious that Bornauw has been brought into this football club to play backup. He's someone that if we don't have our centre-backs available, you can bring in, he can mirror the profiles of potentially Biol or a potential Strauch, or Strauch in the team, and therefore we can have a proper, efficient centre-back playing as a backup rather than putting Ethan Ampadu in. Because I think when we look at sort of Ethan Ampadu in that centre-back role, there's a few issues with it which we know fundamentally. Number one, he's 5'10", and in the Premier League, with the way the Premier League's going at this moment in time, with how important physicality is and how important aerial duels are, having Ethan Ampadu as your centre-back is a nightmare scenario. That's number one. And number two is, of course, if we take Ampadu out of the midfield role and play him at centre-back, then he can't play in the midfield role. He can't play in both. So for me, there's all this narrative going round about Bornauw and about sort of everything that sort of that he needs to be moved on and what's the point in signing him. Well, I thought that was obvious. To me, it seems obvious what we did with Bornauw in the summer. He was there as a backup. He's there as a cheap backup who will be on hardly any money, similar to Nemecha with DCL, where you go, if the main centre-backs are injured, you can bring him in, and we've got someone who can just about mirror the profiles of other players. Not to the same standard, but you're paying £5 million for him. Someone who can come in emergencies and mirror the profiles. And that is what you need in the Premier League. You need depth, and you need ability to switch players in and out if it comes to it. And it not be the end of the world. And I think, unluckily for Bornauw in this situation, none of the centre-backs have been injured this year at all. Strauch's had a bit of a time recently with illness, but for the most part has spent his whole time at Leeds United fit for this year, which has not been something we've seen from Strauch over the last few years. So I think with Bornauw, I'd say to him, and I'd say to other Leeds United fans who were sort of wanting Bornauw out at this moment and saying we don't need him and he was a wasted signing, just wait. Because there might be a point in the season where Rodon goes down injured, or Strauch goes down injured, and Biol goes down injured. Two of the three go down injured, and we are crying out for someone like Bornauw to come in and mirror the profiles of what we got. Yes, he's not the best player in the world, but that was not what we bought. You even look at Arsenal at the most moment in time, what they've done so well. It's about having depth of quality. And I'm not saying, as I said, that Bornauw is superb quality, but what I'm saying is he is someone that can mirror profiles of other centre-backs that we've got, and can play a perfect backup role for when we need him. That is what he's there for. And also as well, if you've got three centre-backs at the football club and you want to go to a back three, if any of them are injured, you're knackered. So again, Bornauw can work in a situation where if we want to go to a back three at certain points, you can bring him on and he can go into a back three, and you don't obviously then need all your centre-backs fit at one moment in time. Ollie says, do you think the next two away games are guaranteed losses, or is there potential to steal points? Well, I think we'll get on to that, but I don't think the next two are guaranteed losses, especially that Forest game. I think the Brighton game will be tricky. Brighton do have a poor record against poorer teams, though. I mean, last year they didn't beat any of the promoted teams and also then the relegated teams at home. They drew with Southampton 1-1, they drew with Ipswich 0-0, and they drew with Leicester 2-2. So I think there is points to be got at Brighton for sure. They're also playing tonight as well, and if we look at the team that they're going to field tonight, that should be something that we can sort of grace positives from. So yeah, I don't think they're write-offs at all. But yeah, to wrap up the Bornauw thing, for me, he's there doing his job. Yes, he's not going to be in all match day squads, but let's wait to the end of the season and see how much he's used based on injuries that we have, because we know Strauch gets injured. We don't know with Bioli's injury record. It was all right at Udinese, but it might have got worse. And we don't want Ampadu playing in centre half, do we? In truth, so yeah, that is my situation with Bornauw. Really, I almost think it's quite obvious. Just keep him. He's not on any money anyway, and there's no point with a sale. So yeah, that is where I'm at with Bornauw. Anyway, let's move on to the next talking point, which is of course other January exits, because I think when we're talking about obviously Bornauw, I think it then brings up the discussion about which other players would you look at moving on in the January transfer window? And I think the obvious one in the cohort that we've got at this moment in time is probably Joel Piroe. Like, you look at Piroe and you think, like Bornauw, not featuring, you've got DCL as your starter, you've got Nemecha as your backup, almost like Bornauw in that sense, and then you've got Piroe, who's a completely different profile, not really going to mirror the attributes of either Nemecha nor DCL, so it doesn't really work as an obvious backup there. But he's someone that's he's a good finisher. He's someone that maybe could be useful at times in a front two if we do go to that. So I do think he's got options. But I look at sort of the January window, and I look at Piroe and think it might be his time. It might be his time. He's done a good job for us. He was obviously brought in to get us out of the Championship, which he's done successfully. But you look at it and you go, yeah, he's had a successful time in the Championship, got us out of the league, but he's not, for me, we've talked about it enough on the channel, but his physical attributes, he's off the ball work, he's not strong enough for me to compete in the division. And people talk about what that would be on the ball in terms of he can't receive the ball when we go long, he can't hold the ball up, he can't bring people into play. But I think the reverse side of that is off the ball, he's horrendous off the ball. We've got to be a unit, and everyone's got to do their job off the ball. And I look at Piroe and I think he can't do his job off the ball because he's not physical enough, he's not strong enough, he's not quick enough. All the physical attributes, he's just not there for a Premier League leveling. And I think you'd be carrying him if you play with him in your 11 to start with. And I don't think Leeds United can afford to carry luxury players in the starting 11 at this moment in time with how good we are in comparison to opposition teams. So Piroe, I think, is someone you could move on. And then I think it brings in the ideas of the loan players. Ramazani, I think, he's an obvious one. He's on loan till the rest of the season, so I think that almost writes that one off in itself. And then you've got Joseph and Gelhardt. And these are where it's more interesting, because obviously there was a fee wanted for Joseph in the summer, and we sort of understood at the time it was in and around the £10 million mark. And then I think you look at sort of, if you could get that again in January with the financial position we know Leeds United are in, and I think it would be interesting to see what people would want to do with that. I'm sort of on the fence with it, because I do see a potential with Joseph, and I think he's someone that could come good at some point. My only thing with Joseph, and it will always be, is he's very, very rash in front of goal. He snatches at chances. And people will go, yeah, but he's young, Scott, and that's what they do. I always think that young players, if you know they're going to be a cold finisher, they sort of start doing it very young. It's almost like, I think finishing in a roundabout way is quite a natural thing. I think it comes to players naturally. I think you've either got a sort of cold, calm head in front of goal, or you haven't. And I think you can work on it, and you can obviously get better at finishing. There's no doubt about it. But I'm on about in pressure moments. Can you keep your head and can you keep composed in front of goal? And I look at how he sort of threw himself at chances in the Championship. And I look at it and I go, is that ever really going to improve? Or is that always going to be a part of his game that's a weakness? And if it is, then do you look at sort of, it's a pure profit, obviously, cash in January if he did do it, because we paid no money for the guy. Is that something you'd look at? Because, of course, also, he didn't say the best things in the summer about Leeds United and Daniel Farke, if we're being totally honest as well. And I know he's a young lad, and I think, obviously, if he had a lot of potential, you might think, well, look past that. But is he someone that potentially could be a troublemaker as well? So is he someone that he's always going to rush at chances, always going to be a potential troublemaker? I'm not saying this is true, by the way. I just think it's an interesting sort of stance to look at with Mateo Joseph. So I think if I'm looking at it with Joseph, I think if there's money there, I think you've got to look at it. I think you do. I think you do. And then, of course, there's Joe Gelhardt. And we talked about Joe Gelhardt the other day, so I don't want to talk about it too much, obviously, since that point, because we sort of mentioned that he's got nice course control. He could be useful at times. But my honest feeling is he's never probably going to develop for Leeds United into a Premier League player. The only thing with Gelhardt, naturally, is that he's not going to... he's only had a good, really... He's had a good 3 or 4 months here at Hull, and he's not really worked any of his loan spells to a high degree. Like, I remember that Sunderland loan spell, and he was pretty appalling, which I thought, obviously, we all thought he'd do really well on, but it didn't really work for him. So, yeah, I do. I look at Joseph and Gelhardt, and I think it's a season-long one. I think you've got to give him the season, and hopefully has a really good campaign for the rest of it, and eventually you can get to a point where you get decent money for Joe Gelhardt. But I think right now, at this moment in time, I look at it and I go, it's probably too early to cash in January. So that's where I'm at. Where I'm at is, I don't think you sell Bornauw. If there's anyone you sell, it's potentially Piroe and Mateo Joseph. I think they're the two you'd look at maybe and cash in on. Although, again, is anyone going to stump up the money for Mateo Joseph in January? I don't think so. So, that's where I'm sort of at with it, with the outgoings. But I'm interested to know in the comments below, if you're not watching live, what you sort of deem to that. But, yeah, that's sort of, I think that's my real feeling on it, if I'm being totally honest. Anyway, let's move on to the next talking point. That's the wrong one, which is, obviously, Leeds United's fixture list. Now, as you can see, obviously, for the record, Brighton's the next game, as we know. So Liverpool is the game that's the 6th one away, if that makes sense. But I look at it, and I've seen a lot of people going, oh, the fixtures are horrendous now, Scott. This is the worst fixtures I've ever seen in my life. Blah, 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 blah. And obviously, the next three don't look so bad when I look at it. And the three after look horrendous. I mean, Man City, Chelsea and Liverpool does look abhorrent, if we're being totally honest. But I do think there's an opportunity before them in the Brighton, Forest and Aston Villa game. Like, these games cannot be write-offs. Like, I look at Aston Villa, for example, as an isolation game there. Their away record has never been that fantastic in the Premier League. They're a team that sort of are strong at home form. Yes, they've come into good form at this moment in time. I think there's seven wins on the trot, except they're obviously lost at Go Ahead Eagles. But again, that goes into logic I'm saying. This is a team that lost at Go Ahead Eagles. So they're not exactly... Look, what I'm saying is I think this is a team that we actually can get points against. Aston Villa, in my personal opinion, I think this is they're a team... that we should be targeting in the home game. I think they're going to probably be in the top 10 this season. But even if you're playing top 10 teams at home, that's got to be a target for points. So I look at that as not an awful game. I think the Forest away game, obviously they're in the bottom three at this moment in time. Yes, I think they're improved under Sean Dyche. And yes, that'll be a tricky game. And yes, if I'm looking at it right now, I think that is going to be a hard game. But, I mean, they're in the rounders at this moment in time. I don't think they're a good vein of form. Sean Dyche has come out recently and said that they're not fit enough at this moment in time. We know that's one of Leeds United's strengths. So it's probably a matchup that at this moment in time probably does suit Leeds United again. So that I don't think that looks particularly awful. And then, of course, you've got the Brighton game this weekend, which, again, like we said, all right, Brighton are a really decent side, but they are playing tonight. We obviously play them on Saturday, which I think is a boost naturally. And of course with Brighton, as I said, this is the team that notoriously, since even Graham Potter was there, they notoriously do poorly against easier opposition at home. Like this year, for example, they've drawn with Fulham, but they beat Man City at home and they beat Newcastle at home. And I think when you look at Brighton over the last few years, even if you talk to Brighton fans, they're a bit similar to that. And I remember Fulham being in the same regard where against poorer teams, they actually seem to struggle because they struggle when they've got the emphasis to break a team down. That's what they struggle with. They struggle when the onus is on them to win a game as opposed to sort of sitting and maybe hit teams in transition. And I think, again, with Leeds United, if we just go there and sort of sit in and soak up the pressure, I know people won't like that. I think we can really do something at Brighton on Saturday. And I think if we were to get the first goal, it could be quite interesting because then you can get into your low block. You can get Biol next to Rodon, who I think will be a good pairing. Perry in goal as well, handling crosses. And I think we can sort of create a block that could worry Brighton. I think if we go 1-0 down, it's obviously going to be very tricky from that point. But you even look at what Everton did a few years ago away at Brighton. When, of course, they went down, doing like 5-1 or something in their relegation season. That obviously kept them in the league. It was an absolutely abhorrent result and an awful result for us at that moment in time. But I do think Brighton are a team that you can get at. I really do. And as I said, I think people look at it as a scary fixture because we know they're going to finish mid-table. We know that they've got a lot of talented players. Minte, Rutters, Danny Welbeck's in flying form at this moment in time. That new Gomez looks fantastic as well. Matoma's there, Baliba's there. There is a lot of talented players in the Brighton setup. But as I said, usually when you give the emphasis to Brighton, they do struggle at actually breaking teams down. And this has been, as I said, this has been an issue for them for a long period of time now, even if you ask Brighton fans. So I think we've got to go in it and hopefully don't make mistakes and keep it tight. And I don't think it's the end of the world. And then you sort of look at the sort of team that they picked tonight as well, which I think is going to play into this. And again, there's quite a few first teamers in there, as you can see. They've got the likes of Baliba's in there, Rutters in there. You've got, who else have you got in there? Van Hecker, obviously, who's in there as well. I mean, there is players in that lineup, quite a lot of them, that actually do feature, even the likes of Gomez, who's obviously featured quite a few times this season. So you've got, I think, again, and Kadadoglu obviously featured at Man United at the weekend. So you've got, again, this is a game where Leeds United can pick up points in. It really is. It's come at a good time. They're playing in the Cup, away at Arsenal as well, so they've got to field a good team. As you can see there, they have done. This has surely got to be an opportunity for Leeds United to pick up points. Surely. Do you know what I mean? I'm not, as I said, I'm not saying we will do, and I'm not saying it's not a tricky game. But I think when you look, as I said, when you look past at Brighton's results when they've played against some of the easier opposition in the division, and then you look at the fact they're playing tonight and they're playing a strong team, a lot of players that will play at the weekend. I think it's got to be a game that Leeds United can get points in. I think it does. I think it does. I like Man City, where when we talked about that game, as you can see there, I get that. It's always going to be a tricky one. But there we are. Easy says, Scott, if you don't think we're a top 10 squad, why are you suggesting we can do something against Brighton? if you are right with your assessment of Leeds, we shouldn't stand a chance against Brighton. It's not that simple though, is it? It's not like, it's not black and white on paper. And obviously we get this because we talk all the time, sort of me and you in the comment section. And it's said it's just not that simple. Like, just because you've got the best team doesn't mean you're automatically going to win a game. And as I said, when I look at sort of Brighton and how they cope and how they play and what suits them, I think if you ask their fans, a game against a sort of Newcastle at home, a game where Newcastle have got an intent to try win the game, just suits them more. They seem that's the games that they suits more. And if you look at past results, that is the data that you see, and that's the data sample you'll see. Like as I said, we all deem that we're better than Leicester, Southampton, and Ipswich, who all got points there last season. We all think we're going to finish on more points than them three, surely. I mean, we're already on the same points as Southampton last year, who got a point there. So just because they've got a better squad than us, which we obviously, for me, they obviously have, doesn't mean that we're just not going to get a win. And again, when you bring into the account the fact that they're playing against Brighton, against Arsenal tonight, away at the Emirates, and they're going to have, obviously, that's going to be a game where they've got to do a lot of defending, they've got to do a lot of running. I think, again, that's going to suit Leeds United. So, yes, it's going to be a tricky game. Obviously, it's going to be a tricky game. I think it will be a hard game. But I'm just not writing it off because I think there is external factors that play into it, really. And it's sort of that simple, really, for me. Anyway, that is probably where I'm going to wrap up the show. A bit of a shorter one today. But I hope you've enjoyed it all, as always. And tomorrow, I'd definitely stick around, by the way. And I've been promoting this for a few days. I haven't done one of these in a while, and I'm really looking forward to it. They've always been pre-records. But tomorrow, we have got the live match preview for Leeds United versus Brighton. So everything we're talking about easy with obviously Brighton at this moment in time, we can obviously bring into that show. But yeah, definitely stick around for that one because I think that is going to be a really, really good really good show tomorrow. What I mean is, for us to finish in the bottom 5, we have to lose these games. Otherwise, we'll finish higher. Right, I see what you mean. Yeah, but I get what you're saying in that sense. But again, when you look at, as I said, you look at Southampton, Ipswich, and Leicester all getting points there, and they all finish in the bottom. They all finish in the bottom 3. So again, I disagree with that because it's also what we've seen easy so far this season as well is just because, as I said, we've got like the better teams in games. Like you look at the Burnley game. Sometimes you lose a Burnley game and then you've got to find points from elsewhere. And I think the Brighton game is one of them where you can go, well, we've lost Burnley, so it'd be nice to pick some points up somewhere else where we probably hope we could get points. And I look at the Brighton game and wonder if that could be a game that we could do it. Jazzbo 9734 says, if we get a point, it will be a positive result. I agree. I'd take a point now, 100%. I actually don't think if we got, I don't know. I don't think in the next few, if we got, in the next 3 games, we've got Villa, Brighton and Forest. If we could get 4 points in them 3 games, that'd be good going. That would be really good going. 4 points in the next 3 would be fantastic. That will put us on, what? We're on 11 now, so we'll be on 15 points then after 12 games. Was it be? Yeah, 12 games. That'd be a really nice return. So yeah, I think a point would be a fantastic result. I really do. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it anyway. But yeah, thanks all for watching as always. And yeah, come on tomorrow at 8 PM and we'll get the thoughts in.